Hey, my fantastic viewer. You being here is better than finding money in your old jacket pocket, and subscribing would be like winning the lottery of my emotions. Buckle up for some serious fun. My name is Michael Andrew Sullivan. Professionally and among those I don't know well, I go by Mr. Sullivan. To my friends, I'm usually just Mike. When I was a kid, my family called me Mikey, a name I've tried hard to leave behind. But to my daughter, the most important person in my world, I'm simply Dad, or Daddy, my most cherished title. And to Rebecca, my wife of nearly 2 decades, that depends on when you asked. There was a time she'd call me Honey, or Mikey Bear. Believe it or not, even Stud Muffin made an appearance. These days, it's been a long time since she's called me anything warm. We'll get there soon enough. By most standards, there's nothing extraordinary about me. I'm a white guy nearing 40, standing just over 6 feet, carrying a few more pounds than I'd like, thanks in part to an affection for Texas barbecue and office treats. I'm not a tech genius, not some millionaire entrepreneur, and definitely not a former Special Forces operative. There's no secret lair, no high-tech gadgets, no hidden double life. What I am is a mid-level attorney, an assistant district attorney in a big Texas county. I do the job I once believed made a real difference, even if it didn't pay like it. My life won't show up in a blockbuster movie, but for a long time, it felt like a meaningful, steady story. A good marriage, a smart, beautiful daughter, a home we worked for, a career built on seeking justice, or at least, that's how I saw it. Law school was 3 intense years of study, but I came out of it knowing one thing clearly. I was born to be in court. Corporate law, tax work, it all felt like a slow death to me. I wanted the energy of trial, the challenge of argument. So I passed on the bigger salaries offered by sleek downtown firms and chose to begin my career in the DA's office, trying misdemeanors for modest pay and little fanfare. The trade-off was obvious: less money, lower status, but real courtroom experience. I was okay with that. My first office had wobbly furniture and the constant flicker of old fluorescent bulbs, but I had what mattered: time on my feet in front of juries, sharpening my skills. If you had grit and could deliver, you moved up quickly to felonies. I did. Now I lead one of our divisions. It's not flashy work, but it means something. At least I like to think it does. I met Rebecca, Becky back then, during my last year of law school at the University of Texas. She was a second-year student, and I was packing up my things in the law library, running late for a seminar when I noticed her. She had auburn hair and a look of mild panic as she scanned the room, searching for a seat while juggling a mountain of textbooks. Something made me stop. Call it manners, call it fate. I waved her over and offered her my spot. She smiled, the kind of smile that takes the air out of your lungs. I joked that she could repay me by doing my corporate law reading, and she laughed. This light, easy laugh that stuck with me. That tiny exchange led to coffee, and coffee led to lunch. By the time graduation rolled around, I was completely hooked. I landed a year-long clerkship with a judge in Austin, which was perfect, close enough to stay near Becky as she finished law school. We found a small apartment off campus, tight on space and tighter on money, but full of laughter and late-night takeout. After she passed the bar, we got married. It wasn't a lavish affair, just a spring afternoon surrounded by loved ones. I can still picture her walking toward me, radiant and sure, like there was no one else on earth. We were 23 and ready to take on anything. Haley came not long after. She wasn't planned, but she was perfect. The first time I held her in the hospital, all bundled up and impossibly tiny, I was overwhelmed. It was like staring at a miracle you helped create. From day one, she was Daddy's girl, my little sidekick. It felt like she had me wrapped around her finger before I even knew what hit me. Back then, our days were busy but joyful. I'd taken a role at the DA's office that offered reasonable hours. Intentionally so. I wanted to be home for bedtime stories and morning cereal spills. Rebecca's career took a different path. She worked in commercial litigation at a mid-sized firm. Her job paid well and demanded a lot, but we'd agreed I'd be the constant at home so she could chase that ambitious track. It was a partnership. I made dinner most nights, picked up Haley from daycare, and read her books in funny voices. Rebecca handled court filings and client meetings with precision. Together, we made it work. Sure, it got hectic. There were mornings when Haley had a fever and I had a trial opening due, and everything felt like it might fall apart. But we figured it out. Back then, we did. For a long time, I believed we'd cracked the code on marriage, work, and raising a child. We always had each other's backs. When I secured a major conviction, Becky treated me to beers and Whataburger to celebrate, and when she made junior partner at her firm, I surprised her with a weekend trip to the hill country. Haley happily stayed with her grandparents. I thought we were aligned, in step with each other's lives. I convinced myself we were. Around 7 years into our marriage, just as Haley started first grade, Becky landed a job at Bickman and Burnham, one of Texas's most elite law firms. Everyone called it Triple B, or just B if you were in a hurry. It was a legal behemoth, with a footprint across multiple states and a reputation that bordered on legendary. This was the kind of firm young attorneys dreamed of: big-name clients, private jet perks, and a pipeline straight to the top of the legal food chain. The partners there were like legal aristocracy. Carter Bickman and his twin sister Camille, nicknamed the Big B for her massive personality and ego to match, ran the show alongside Edward Burnham. Together, they ruled the firm with an air of untouchable superiority. Honestly, their attitude could have been summed up with, "Our shit doesn't stink." The arrogance radiating from that place was intense. Even the receptionists walked around like they had law degrees from Yale. If you weren't part of B, you didn't matter. But no one could deny their wealth or influence. They made boatloads of money and had serious pull in legal and political circles. Becky was both thrilled and anxious to accept the offer. It was a massive career leap. We sat down and had a long, honest talk before she made her decision. We both knew what it would mean: longer hours, more nights away, and a lot more stress. The bait on the hook, a potential shot at becoming an equity partner in a few years if she played her cards right. And equity partners at B? Even the newcomers made over $500,000 annually, while the senior folks pulled in millions. The prestige alone was like a drug, and the connections? Unreal. The partners had governors on their speed dials and corporate CEOs calling them by their first names. They showed up in national papers, chaired high-profile committees, and rubbed elbows with judges at black-tie fundraisers. This was the big time. I told Becky, "If this is what you want, I'm behind you. We'll figure it out. I'll keep things running at home. You go chase this dream," and I meant it. I was genuinely proud. A part of me also figured that one of us needed to bring in serious income because my ADA salary wasn't exactly raking it in. So Becky dove in, and I cheered her on every step of the way. She started strong at B, and for the first couple of years, we managed to stay afloat. Sure, she worked like she had something to prove to the devil himself, but we still carved out time for family. Weekends together and occasional date nights when Haley could stay with my sister or her parents. Becky's grind began to pay off. She scored a couple of new clients thanks to a mix of sharp networking and her natural charm, and she once crafted a legal argument that saved a major company millions. The higher-ups took notice. They started treating her like someone on the rise. But as the years rolled by, I saw B's culture start to shape Becky. It was subtle at first. Changes in her tone, her posture, the way she talked about her work versus mine. In the beginning, she'd light up when I shared a small victory, even if it was over a petty theft case. She'd genuinely listen. But a few years into her time at B, that changed. I'd tell her about a big win in court, and she'd give me a quick, "That's nice, honey," before launching into some major corporate deal her team had closed. My job started to feel quaint to her, like it didn't really matter. At first, I told myself she was just tired, distracted. But looking back, I can see the exact moment things began to slip. She had been with B for about 4 years. Haley was 11, a fifth grader growing into a sharp, confident kid. And by that time, B had sunk its hooks deep into Becky. The firm's unspoken promise was clear: "Give us everything, and we'll make you royalty." And Becky gave them everything. It began with small sacrifices, an extra hour at her desk here, a professional development retreat there. But the demands escalated. Slowly, B began consuming more of her time and more of her spirit. Evenings once spent together became rare. Becky was usually still at the office, buried in depositions and deadlines, while Haley and I had dinner alone, reheated food or takeout eaten at the kitchen island, just the two of us, while Becky stayed up in that gleaming tower downtown. Night after night, the pattern repeated. Some evenings, Becky wouldn't get home until well after Haley had gone to bed. What used to be our weekly movie ritual as a family gradually slipped to once a month, and then almost never. At first, I tried to stay patient. It's just temporary, I told myself. She's probably swamped with a big case or caught in the thick of travel. This'll blow over. But it didn't. One night stands out in my memory. I'd cooked her favorite, chicken marsala, hoping we'd share a quiet dinner together. She'd promised she'd be home by 7. By 8:30, still no sign of her. When she finally walked through the door around 9, she looked drained and offered an apologetic smile. She'd missed the meal entirely. Haley had already given up and gone to bed. I was annoyed, sure, but I still warmed her plate, trying to let it go. "Hey," I said gently. "I know work is hectic, but Haley was really excited about dinner with you." "So was I." Becky gave a weary sigh. "Mike, you're making it sound worse than it is. And if you had my job, you'd get it. I can't always decide when I leave the office." That tone, patronizing, dismissive, cut a little deeper than I expected. If you had my job. I swallowed the sting and let it pass. But that night wasn't an exception. It became the norm. Weekday family time disappeared. Then the weekends began to vanish too. Some last-minute meeting, some networking event, some case too important to postpone. Every weekend had a reason she couldn't be with us. I brought it up. More than once. Told her outright that Haley needed more time with her mom. That I needed more time with her. But every conversation followed a script. She'd either downplay the issue, "You're making a bigger deal out of it than it is, Mike," or explain it away. "I have to grind now if I want to make partner. I'm doing this for us, can't you see?" Once, she snapped, "Walk a mile in my Louboutins and then tell me how easy you think this is." Her voice was sharp, impatient. I kept my voice calm. "Bex, I know you work incredibly hard, but there's a lot happening here at home and you're missing it." She didn't let me finish. "Not this again," she muttered. "Mike, your 9-to-5 government job lets you clock out and forget about work. That's not how things work in my world. You want to talk about pressure? You don't know pressure." There it was again. If you had my job, maybe you'd understand. That one hit harder than she probably realized. She wasn't just defending herself. She was cutting down what I did, as though my work didn't matter because it wasn't prestigious or lucrative. That sentiment stayed with me. There was a particularly painful stretch of months when Becky missed everything that mattered. My birthday? Forgotten, unless you count a late text from D.C. where she was stuck at some conference. Haley's birthday? A 5-minute FaceTime from an airport terminal. Our anniversary? I'd booked our favorite steakhouse. She never even made it. Client dinner ran long. The Sullivan family reunion at the lake house, one we'd planned for ages. She pulled out the day before, needing to resolve an issue for a high-profile client. But the one that hurt Haley the most was the Girl Scout Silver Award ceremony. She had poured 2 years into earning that award. She was proud, beaming, and had asked specifically for her mom to pin the badge on her. Becky wasn't there. She was in New York, tied up with a merger negotiation that apparently couldn't wait. I sat alone in the school auditorium, an empty chair beside me, while Haley stepped on stage. She wore a brave smile, but I could see the disappointment beneath it. Still, I clapped as hard as I could, loud enough for both of us. Even with all that, Haley found her own way forward. She's one of those rare kids who shines no matter the weather, who doesn't wait for sunlight but makes her own. She has a gift, especially with words and languages. Around that time, she decided she wanted to learn French, not for school, but because she fell in love with Les Miserables, the musical, and wanted to read Hugo's original novel in its native language. In less than a year, she was breezing through full chapters and catching mistakes Google Translate missed. Her intuition is almost unsettling, sharp, unnervingly accurate. She can catch the tiniest inflection in someone's voice and instantly know what's really going on beneath the surface. Naturally, that kind of insight is both a gift and a curse. It made her a star in school debates and helped her steer the maze of teenage friendships. But it also meant she sensed something was unraveling between her mother and me, long before I was willing to face the truth myself. I think the moment it truly hit me was one bright Thursday morning. We were getting ready to head out for a long weekend at Lake LBJ. Becky's parents had a lake house there, and these getaways used to be something we all looked forward to. We'd loaded the car the night before, the SUV stuffed with beach towels, sunscreen, and snacks. Haley was practically bursting with anticipation, giddy about tubing on the lake and seeing her cousins. I was tossing the last cooler into the trunk when Becky strode into the kitchen, already in one of her sleek business suits, and out of nowhere said, "I can't come." Something came up. I have to fly to Chicago with Camille Bickman and Jason Garrity. Senior partner emergency. Deals on the line. I stood there stunned, still holding a duffel bag. "You're serious?" "We're about to leave." She didn't look up, thumbing through her phone as if reading a weather report. "I didn't expect this either, Mike. Believe me, I'd rather be at the lake." But Camille insisted. "It's high stakes." She glanced at me briefly, then went back to tapping away. "I'll be back Tuesday." Just like that, she was out. The Chicago trip was just the latest in a string of sudden getaways. The week before it was Raleigh, for what she described as a merger meeting that would shape the fate of the universe. Her words laced with sarcasm when I questioned how urgent it really was. And a few weeks earlier, she was in Hawaii for 5 days, supposedly attending a legal seminar, which, let's be honest, was clearly more about sipping Mai Tais than studying tax codes. No one flies halfway to the Pacific for a serious seminar when they could host the same thing in Jersey. Each time she vanished on short notice, leaving Haley and me scrambling. This time I didn't let it slide quietly. I wasn't shouting, but I made my frustration clear. "You realize you're leaving me to show up alone to another one of your family events? Again? How often are you going to pick work over us? Your parents are expecting you. Haley was looking forward to this, and now you're just gone." I tried to hold my voice steady, not let it crack with disappointment. More and more I felt like a single parent, and I was tired, deeply tired of that feeling. She sighed, pacing the kitchen as she tossed items into her carry-on. "Mike, this isn't my choice. I have to go." "This deal's big. You know I don't work some 9-to-5 punch clock like you. Family stuff can wait. This matters." She said matters like I was too naive to understand the stakes. I tried to get through to her, begged her, almost, to just acknowledge the damage she was doing. "Becky, keep putting everything off until later, and eventually there won't be a later. You're going to delay yourself right out of this family." I was trying to stay composed, but there was an edge in my voice. She stopped packing just long enough to shoot back. "I'll make it up to Haley when I get back, okay? Tell everyone I'm sorry, but this is non-negotiable. They'll understand." I wanted to keep pushing, to break through whatever wall she'd put up. But I'd been down this road before. The second she called it important, the door slammed shut. The Becky I married had slowly been replaced by someone I barely recognized. I knew better by then than to keep arguing. All I'd get was another dismissive sigh or a monologue about how I couldn't possibly comprehend her world. She disappeared into the closet, rifling through hangers for more clothes. I remember noticing, half aware, that she was packing far more than a 2-day business trip would require. It didn't fully register at the time. Looking back, that overstuffed roller bag should have screamed at me. Later, I'd find out she'd packed her good lingerie, not that I was checking then. Instead of picking another fight I couldn't win, I slipped out into the backyard for some air. I needed distance, real physical space between us. Otherwise, I was going to say something I'd regret. Something that would leave a mark I couldn't take back. The screen door slammed behind me, echoing through the stillness as I stepped onto the porch and drew a few deep breaths of the humid Texas air. My gaze drifted blankly toward the old pecan tree in the yard, my chest tight with frustration. It felt absurd, getting so worked up trying to argue with someone who may as well have been made of stone. That's what she turned into when it came to work. Unyielding, unmoved, a brick wall. Hell, I probably would have gotten more sympathy from that damn tree. What I didn't realize was that Haley had been standing just outside our bedroom, within earshot. Whether she had been about to knock or was drawn by the sound of our raised voices, I don't know. But she heard it all. I found that out when I came back inside. By then, Becky was already wheeling her suitcase through the kitchen, collected, efficient, and on her way out. She offered a mechanical, "I'll call when I land." "I'm sorry. Love you," as if reciting from a checklist rather than expressing anything real. Then she was gone. I watched her through the front window as she tossed the suitcase into her car, a glossy Mercedes SUV she'd bought during her career boom. She joked it was her gunship, given its size, and it did barrel down the street like one. Moments later, Haley wandered into the kitchen, clutching a juice box. Her posture slumped, and there was a heaviness in her expression that spoke of disappointment, wrapped in resignation. "So Mom left again," she said quietly. "Where to this time? And how long?" "Chicago. She says she'll be back by Tuesday. It's a work trip, Pumpkin." I tried to keep the tone breezy, even understanding, but there was an edge I couldn't quite hide. Haley gave me a lopsided, too-knowing smile that didn't belong on a 13-year-old. "Yeah, that's what she said." Something in her tone made me look at her closely. Then she admitted, "I heard you guys fighting." "I didn't mean to listen, Daddy, but I needed to know." I sighed and pulled out a chair for her at the table, sitting down beside her. A part of me felt ashamed that she'd been exposed to all that. Another part, if I was being honest, felt relieved. Carrying that tension alone was exhausting, and there was no point pretending anymore. "Well," I said softly, "then you heard your mom say she'll make it up to us when she gets back." I tried to soften the situation, glossing over the exact words Becky had used. I didn't want to turn Haley against her. But Haley, perceptive as always, shook her head. "That's not what she said, Dad. She said she'd make it up to me. She didn't say anything about you. Leave it to my daughter to pick up on the nuance I'd missed entirely." Becky had directed her apology solely at Haley, not me. I sat there, caught off guard, unsure of what to say. Before I could respond, Haley pressed on, her face flushing with emotion. "Daddy, something's not right. With Mom, with the two of you, but mostly her, I think. She forgot your birthday, mine, and your anniversary dinner. She treats you like you don't matter. And it's changing you. You're not the same anymore. You used to laugh more. Now you just seem sad." Her voice cracked. She tried to stay composed, but a tear welled up in the corner of her eye. I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close. "Your mom and I are working through some stuff," I said gently. "It's adult things. But I'm sorry it's affecting you. Just know this, I love you more than anything in this world. That'll never change, okay?" She rested her head on my shoulder for a moment and gave a small smile at our familiar phrase. Still, she wasn't finished. "But you can't fix anything if she's never even here," she said. "She doesn't listen, not even for a minute. And I know I'm just a kid, but guess what? What happens between you and Mom does affect me. You always say being honest matters. So please, tell me the truth. Are you and Mom, are we, going to be okay? Because it really doesn't feel okay." Hearing her voice tremble like that, with fear and frustration laced together, nearly shattered me. I wanted to promise everything would be all right, to give her the comfort she desperately needed. But I've never lied to Haley, and I couldn't start now. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said quietly, the words catching in my throat. "Your mom and I have a lot to sort through, but you and me, we're going to be okay. I'll always be here for you. Always." She nodded slowly, thoughtfully. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was the only one I could give. After a pause, I forced a more cheerful tone. "All right, kiddo. If we want to make the most of the daylight at the lake, we better get moving. Grandpa's world-famous smoked brisket isn't going to eat itself." I tousled Haley's hair gently. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand and forced a smile. I need my turn on the jet ski before the cousins hog it for the whole weekend. That's my girl, I said, smiling back. We both silently agreed to set aside the sadness and do our best to enjoy the weekend ahead. I helped her into the truck and we pulled out of the driveway, the same spot that not long ago should have seen the three of us leaving together. The weekend at the lake with Becky's family started off uncomfortable, showing up solo, without my wife, and having to trot out the same tired excuse to her parents and siblings. Work pulled her away again, was getting harder each time. They were kind enough, but I could feel the tension in the air, especially from her mother, whose concern had started to morph into something closer to disappointment. This wasn't the first family event Becky had skipped, and people were beginning to doubt that work was the only reason. On the second night, her mother pulled me aside, her brow furrowed with worry. Is everything okay between you two? She asked, her voice low. We're just concerned about Rebecca. She seems different lately. What was I supposed to say to that? I gave my usual rehearsed answer. That Becky was under a mountain of pressure at work, trying to make partner. That it would ease up once she got through it. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. She squeezed my hand but didn't look reassured. Just take care of our girl, she said softly. I nodded, feeling a pit in my stomach. How could I protect someone who barely let me close anymore? Despite the tension hanging over the adults, Haley had a fantastic time. She went tubing, roasted marshmallows, and devoured her grandfather's brisket just like we'd planned. And I tried to lose myself in the joy of watching her. We swam, and I even showed her how to handle the little fishing boat. She loved that. At night, she and her cousins ran through the yard chasing fireflies. Those moments brought a warm ache, a blend of gratitude for this family and heartbreak for what seemed to be slipping away. Becky called once, late Sunday night. The call was brief, mostly just to ask if she could speak to Haley, who was already asleep after a long day in the sun. I said I'd tell her mom called. Before hanging up, I ventured, "How's Chicago?" "Productive," she replied flatly. "We're wrapping up tomorrow. I'll be flying back Tuesday as planned." "That's good," I said. There was so much more I wanted to ask, but the silence between us felt too heavy. "Good night, Rebecca," I murmured. We hardly ever used full names with each other, and the formality felt strange. "Night," she said after a beat, her voice softer. Haley and I made the drive home Monday. We were sunburned, a little worn out, but happy in that quiet, satisfied way. Becky returned Tuesday afternoon just like she said. That evening, during dinner, Haley was eager for connection. She fired off questions like a rapid-fire reporter. How was your trip? Did you see anything cool? Have time for fun? Becky, clearly drained, barely looked up from her plate. Her responses were clipped. Fine. No. Too busy. Each word landed with less warmth than the last. Haley's face fell. She had been trying hard. I tried to lighten the mood with a joke. Did you at least manage to get some deep dish while you were there? I asked with a smile. Becky shot me a look like I'd asked something ridiculous. No, Mike. We were working the whole time. It wasn't a vacation. She offered a tight smile, perhaps realizing how curt she sounded. But the moment had already soured. Haley went quiet, stirring the food on her plate with her fork. A few awkward minutes passed with only the clinking of silverware between us. Then she mumbled, "I've got homework," and walked off, defeated. I cleared the table in silence while Becky scrolled through her phone. Inside, I was burning. She couldn't even pretend to be interested in her own daughter's excitement. Still, I bit back the anger. After finishing up in the kitchen, I found her in the bedroom, unpacking. I spoke gently. "Maybe go say goodnight to Haley?" She was really happy you're home. "I will," she said quickly, not looking up. "Just need to answer a couple of emails first." I left the room before frustration got the better of me. From down the hallway, I heard her eventually knock. Go into Haley's room for a few minutes, then return to ours. Later, when I passed by my daughter's door, she was already asleep. Or pretending well enough that I couldn't tell the difference. That night, lying beside a woman who barely felt familiar anymore, I found myself staring at the ceiling, finally facing the thought I'd been pushing aside for far too long. Our marriage wasn't just in a slump, it was unraveling. We weren't two people weathering a storm together. We were ships drifting apart, barely acknowledging each other's course. Rebecca was soaring professionally, a blazing star in her firm sky, while Haley and I lingered in her shadow, distant and dimmed. Time blurred. Weeks bled into months. Summer passed unnoticed, and with it I watched Rebecca grow more detached from us. When she was home, her mind wasn't. Always tethered to the next client call or presentation, her presence was a shadow at best. Our conversations became scripted, cautious. We moved around each other like dance partners afraid to step on toes, performing the motions without feeling. To the outside world, we might have still looked the part. An ambitious couple with titles, a beautiful house, and a precocious daughter. But behind closed doors, the affection had all but vanished. At best, we were housemates. At worst, we were cold strangers. I made efforts to reach her. I arranged date nights, trying to reignite even a spark. But she canceled, or arrived distracted and late. I brought up counseling just to help us reconnect, but she brushed it aside with a dismissive smile. "Mike, everything's fine. You're overthinking things," she'd say, laughing off my concern. But nothing was fine. Her casual dismissal only deepened my frustration. One evening, in a final attempt to break through, I waited in the kitchen with her favorite Cabernet already breathing on the counter. It was nearly 11 when she walked in, visibly worn out. Instead of confronting her, I softly offered a glass. "Sit with me for a bit," I said. To my surprise, she did. We sat mostly in silence, sipping. Then I finally let the words come. "I miss you, Becky. We both do." My voice trembled, despite my effort to keep it firm. She closed her eyes, and for a fleeting moment I saw the woman I had fallen for. The woman who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and hold my hand without thinking. She reached out and clasped my hand. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I know I haven't been here." The pressure at work, it's relentless. They've all but guaranteed me the next partner slot if I keep pushing, just a little longer. After that, things will settle down. I'll be able to breathe again. I swear. I wanted to believe her. More than anything, I wanted that to be true. I squeezed her hand. "If you're certain," I said gently. "But you need to make space for us too." "Not someday. Now." "Haley's growing up fast. She needs you. I need you." The last part escaped me more like a plea than a statement. She nodded slowly, eyes moist. "You're right," she whispered. "I'll do better. I will." For a week or two, there was a flicker of change. She started making time for dinner at home here and there. She even came to one of Haley's field hockey games on a Saturday, though she was glued to her phone for most of it. Still, I held on to those moments. I told myself, maybe this is the start of something real. The firm's decision on her partnership was only weeks away. Maybe the light at the end of this tunnel was real, and then it all began to fall apart. It started small, a whisper of doubt that I tried to silence. A creeping thought I didn't want to entertain. Could there be someone else? No, I told myself. Not Becky. Not the woman who used to cry over cheesy rom-coms and left "I love you" notes on the bathroom mirror. She wasn't unfaithful. She was just overworked. That's all. But then little things started to raise alarms. A faint, unfamiliar scent, cologne, not hers, lingering on her blazer. She said it must have rubbed off from a colleague during a meeting. She started wearing a new perfume, one I hadn't bought, one she never wore at home. Maybe she only applied it at the office, I told myself. And then she changed her phone's passcode. She'd never bothered before. When I casually asked her why, she simply told me that Company B had implemented stricter security protocols. I didn't think much of it, until one evening I saw her take her phone with her into the bathroom while she showered, something she'd never done before. It was the accumulation of subtle changes like that. Harmless in isolation. I brushed each one off with some rational explanation, because the alternative, that my wife might be cheating, was far too devastating to accept. But then came that night. Almost a year had passed since the awful weekend at the lake. It was a Friday, and Becky told me she was heading out for a girls' night with her longtime best friend, Cassandra, Cassie. They'd been close since they were kids, went through a sorority together, practically sisters. I trusted Cassie completely. She'd stood beside us as a bridesmaid at our wedding. Nothing about the plan raised suspicion. In fact, I was actually relieved Becky was going out and having fun. She'd been working hard, and maybe Cassie would help her rediscover a bit of balance. That night, with Haley off at a sleepover, I had the house to myself. I ordered some pizza, cracked open a beer, and decided to watch Unfaithful on HBO. Yeah, the 2002 film with Richard Gere and Diane Lane about a cheating wife. Maybe I was drawn to it out of some dark curiosity, or maybe I needed something that mirrored the confusion I'd been feeling lately. There was something oddly therapeutic about watching someone else's life unravel. I was midway through the movie, right around the part where Gere's character starts sensing something's off, when I heard a car door shut outside. Then the familiar jingle of keys at the front door. I glanced at the clock. 10:30 p.m. That seemed early for a girls' night to end. The door opened and Becky stepped inside. She looked incredible. Dressed in a sleek black dress and heels, makeup a little smudged, hair done, more glamorous than I'd expected for a night in with Cassie. Her expression faltered for a brief second when she saw me. A flicker of surprise and maybe even guilt before she quickly tried to recover. "You're home early," I said, trying to sound casual, though my tone carried an edge of curiosity I couldn't quite hide. She froze for a beat, then responded breezily, "Yeah, it didn't really pan out." Cassie wasn't feeling great. Think it was bad sushi or something? We ended things early. She turned away from me, shrugging off her coat, avoiding my eyes. Something felt wrong. That invisible tension you can't quite name but can feel in your bones. It was too soon for Cassie to be sick from sushi they'd just eaten. And Becky looked more like she'd come from a nightclub than from comforting a sick friend. Still, I played along. "That sucks," I said. "You could have called me." "I'd have come to get you." She waved that off. "Nah, I just took a lift. Didn't want to trouble you." That's when her eyes landed on the television. Richard Gere was on screen, rifling through his wife's belongings in search of proof. The scene could not have been more on the nose. The irony hit like a freight train. She gave a short, uneasy laugh. "What are you watching?" My gaze stayed on the TV. "Unfaithful. You seen it?" She shook her head. "No, I don't think so. It's about a guy who suspects his wife's cheating. Hires a private investigator. Finds out she's having an affair with some French guy. Doesn't end well." I said it all evenly, my tone calm but deliberate. I snuck a glance at her. Her eyes flickered, widened just slightly. She swallowed and bit her lip. "Huh. Nope, never saw that one." I reached for the remote, paused the film, and turned to face her fully for the first time since she'd walked in. "It's a wild story," I said, my heart pounding. "This guy keeps seeing signs." Tries to ignore them. Eventually, he can't. So he gets the evidence, and once he knows for sure, he confronts the guy she's seeing. I gave a dry, joyless smile. "And, well?" Her brows drew together slightly. "And what?" "Caca pasa," I said, watching her reaction closely. She blinked. "Caca, what?" "Shit happens," I replied flatly. "He ends up killing the guy. With a snow globe, beats him to death in a fit of rage." Her face went pale. "Jesus, Mike," she said, forcing a shaky laugh. "He kills someone over an affair? Isn't he supposed to be like a prosecutor or something?" I shrugged, still looking right at her. "It's just a movie," I said. "Don't worry. I'm not looking to take notes." I paused, then added softly, "And no, just for the record, you don't get to kill someone for cheating." Thing is, choices come with fallout. Sometimes massive. As the kids like to put it these days, FAFO. She tilted her head slightly, eyes uncertain and nervous. "What does that even mean?" she asked. I dropped my voice an octave, imitating some faux serious James Earl Jones vibe. "Mess around to find out." The moment those words left my mouth, the air in the room felt colder. Becky froze in place, her eyes locking onto mine, lips parted slightly as she swallowed. I could practically see the gears in her brain turning. Was I hinting at something deeper? Had I figured it out? A few long, tense seconds passed before she managed to speak. "About the other night before I left for Chicago, I shouldn't have snapped at you," she murmured, carefully sidestepping what I'd just said. "I really am sorry." She took a small step forward, offering a tentative smile. "Why don't you—" Come to bed. I miss you. It was such a dramatic pivot, I nearly laughed. She was clearly rattled, trying to soften the moment, maybe with seduction. She hadn't initiated anything in forever, so this sudden shift was telling. She must have taken my find-out comment as a veiled accusation. Like maybe I knew. Now she was scrambling, trying to keep control of the narrative, trying to reel me back in, convince me that everything was still fine, that I was still under her thumb. But I wasn't going to be the clueless fool anymore. Not this time. She reached out, brushing my arm with a feather-light touch. "Come on, Mikey," she whispered, using the pet name she hadn't said in what felt like ages. "Let's go to bed. I owe you." She leaned in, sultry now, lips close. "A real apology." I caught a whiff of her perfume, laced with a faint trace of sweat, like she'd been out all night, maybe dancing, or maybe something else. I gently removed her hand. "No thanks," I said, voice calm and even. She blinked in disbelief. Rejection was not something she expected. Any time she'd so much as hinted at wanting closeness, I used to jump at the chance. But this time, I shut it down. She looked stunned, maybe even a little hurt. "Mike, I'm trying—" I cut her off with a cold smile. "To do what? Fix it with a pity screw?" I wasn't yelling, I wasn't cruel, just steady. "I'm good, Becky. I'm not that hungry for crumbs." The hurt in her eyes flared into anger. "Wow, really? I apologized for snapping at you, and now I'm trying to reconnect and you're being a jerk?" I stood up from the couch, feeling the bitterness spill over despite my best effort to keep it down. "Reconnect?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "You've avoided connection for months. Remember the last time I tried anything? You brushed me off like I was annoying. Now suddenly you're feeling generous. What, because a line from a movie made you squirm?" I shook my head. "It doesn't work that way, Rebecca. I don't want guilt-driven affection. I want to feel like I matter, like I'm not just a burden or, as you so kindly put it, a time clock-punching roommate." I heard my own voice rising but couldn't stop it. The words had waited too long to come out. She flinched slightly, her jaw tightening. "That's not fair," she shot back. "I said I'm sorry. And yes, I do want you. Do you think I haven't noticed the distance between us? I'm stressed too, and I'm making an effort." Her tone turned defensive, irritated. "Effort?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Tell me something. If I hadn't said anything just now, would you have still missed me tonight? Or did I rattle you just enough to remind you I might not stick around forever?" Her cheeks turned red. "God, do you really think that little of me?" she said softly. I didn't respond right away. Just looked at her, tired, frustrated, broken in a dozen quiet ways. "You said you wanted to make it up to Haley," I said eventually. "Maybe that's where you should focus your energy. She needs her mom right now. I'm a grown man. I can get by without affection. But she shouldn't have to." Her eyes shimmered with sudden wetness. It was as if I'd slapped her across the face. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Her voice was ice, steady, deliberate. "All right then. If that's really where you stand..." She straightened her posture, drawing an invisible line in the sand. "You can sleep in your den tonight since it's clearly too much to ask you to share a bed with me anymore. Maybe for good, Michael." She launched my name like a weapon. I had extended a peace offering and she'd torched it without hesitation. I looked at her, stunned, a storm of disbelief and anger swelling in my chest. How effortlessly she shifted from allure to condemnation. "I've already been in the den for weeks," I muttered, bitterness lacing my voice. "What's a few more nights?" Maybe I snore less from down the hall. Her eyes narrowed. "You know what? Fine. Stay in that damn den until you're over your little tantrum." Her tone snapped like a whip. "Things are changing around here, starting now." "I will not be treated like this in my own house, Mike." She shouted it loud enough that I flinched, glancing toward Haley's room, half expecting her to wake. I raised a hand in mock obedience. "Yes, ma'am. Whatever you say." My tone was devoid of anything but exhaustion. Something inside me cracked wide open in that moment. Whatever lingering hope I'd clung to, that we might somehow repair this, died right then. If she ever wanted to fix things, she no longer did. She stared, her eyes gleaming, maybe bracing for me to argue. But I had no fight left. I just turned and left, her fury trailing me like smoke. I walked to the cramped guest room, the place I'd unofficially claimed over the past several months. My personal exile, my shelter from the frostbite of our shared silence. Once inside, I shut the door and leaned against it. My heart thudded in my chest. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage, from brutal realization. She'd just cast me as the villain in her story, conveniently ignored her own role in all of this. She was laying the foundation, I realized. Mike's the disrespectful one. Mike's the unreasonable one. It felt like her way of soothing her conscience. Or perhaps paving the road for something she didn't want to admit. Or both. I sank onto the pull-out couch, pressing my palms into my face. Any lingering uncertainty I'd felt had just been erased. I needed answers. Not guesses, not coincidences, not instincts. Hard truth. If she really was being unfaithful, and everything in me screamed that she was, then I needed irrefutable proof. Without it, she'd rewrite the story years from now. She'd paint me as a paranoid wreck who destroyed our marriage over nothing. Or worse, I might start to believe her lies myself. I had to see clearly. I had to move forward with my eyes wide open. And so as I sat there, fragments of scattered thoughts snapped into focus. A grim but necessary course of action emerged. Step 1, hire a private investigator. There was someone I knew through a work contact, Perry Desmond. A retired cop now running his own investigation firm. He came highly recommended. A friend in the DA's office used him during her own divorce, caught her ex red-handed with both financial deception and another woman. If anyone could get the truth, it was Desmond. I didn't give myself time to hesitate. I slipped out of the den, moving quietly through the darkened hallway, and grabbed my laptop from the living room. From our bedroom, I could hear drawers slamming and muffled cursing. Becky, no doubt, changing clothes and stewing. Back in the den, I closed the door behind me. The digital clock glowed past midnight, but I didn't care. I opened my email and typed a message to Desmond's firm, flagged as urgent. I wrote that I needed a meeting as soon as possible about a suspected infidelity case. Then I hit send. I sat in silence, eyes fixed on the wall, heart pounding as a rush of adrenaline coursed through me. Anger and sorrow pulsed in my chest like a second heartbeat. Then came the sound, a notification buzz from my phone. Of course. As if summoned by my thoughts, it was a message from an unknown number. At the time, I had no clue who was behind it. I have information you need to know about Rebecca. It's important, please don't ignore this. My heart jolted. Was this some kind of twisted joke? A scammer fishing for attention? I responded, cautious. Who is this? The reply didn't come immediately, just those 3 blinking dots dancing across the screen. Then the message appeared. You don't know me, but I know what your wife's been up to. She's cheating, and I can prove it. I almost dropped my phone. My hands went cold and started shaking. Could this possibly be real? For a fleeting moment, I wondered if Rebecca had orchestrated this, some bizarre loyalty test to see if I trusted her. But that thought was paranoid, even for me. It was more believable that someone was trying to help, either out of principle or revenge. Whatever the motive, I needed to see what they had. Prove it, I texted back. The phone rang instantly. Same number. I froze, then picked up. A woman's voice, quiet but steady, came through. I don't have long, but what I said is the truth. Your wife and a man named Jason Garrity, he's a partner at her firm. They're having an affair. Everyone at B knows, even the senior partners, and they're covering for them. It hit like a punch. Even though I'd started to suspect, hearing the words spoken aloud shattered any hope of denial. I found my voice, strained and rough. Who are you? Why are you telling me this? She ignored the first question. Because I've been where you are. My own marriage collapsed last year. My husband, also a lawyer, ran off with his assistant, lied to my face while I raised our 2 little kids, left us behind like we were nothing. I wish someone had warned me. I would have done things differently, so I'm warning you. Her voice cracked with raw emotion, equal parts anger and compassion. I sat there stunned, barely able to think. Thank you, I muttered, still in shock. But part of me needed something solid. You said you could prove it? Check your email, she replied. I just sent something from a temporary address. You'll find hotel bookings, internal emails I copied, schedules for their so-called work trips. But it was never about work. They've been clever, using company resources to cover it. Some of us figured it out. The partners know everything, and they let it slide. Actually, they help hide it. They think they're untouchable. My thoughts raced, trying to keep up. Partners protecting the affair? An entire institution backing this betrayal? Why would they do that? I asked, incredulous. She gave a bitter laugh. Because Jason brings in money, big clients. And your wife? She's their golden girl. As long as the revenue keeps flowing, they don't care who's screwing who. The firm even leases apartments in the city for late-night work. Guess which two use them most, and not for sleeping. My stomach lurched. It all made sense now. Rebecca never came home smelling of intimacy, and she didn't need a shower because she already had one. A modest, company-sponsored love nest with all the amenities. God. The voice continued. I hear something, Mr. Sullivan. They let their guard down when they think no one is listening. Today, I overheard a conversation between Jason and your wife. She gets nervous because you keep aloof and refuse to be intimate. She thinks you're starting to understand. So they postpone trips for a while, but visit apartments? It's still happening. I realized I was clenching the phone so tightly my knuckles had gone pale. I forced myself to stay calm. You work there, don't you? There was a pause. Yes, she said at last. That's all I'm saying about me. I don't want recognition. I'm doing this because I hate seeing liars get away with it. My ex did for way too long. I'm not letting it happen again, not if I can stop it. My eyes burned unexpectedly. Not from sorrow, but from a storm of gratitude and shame. It took a stranger to make me realize the truth I'd been avoiding. I really mean this. Thank you, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I'm not looking for gratitude, she replied. Just take the information and do what you need to. She hesitated, then added, One more thing. You didn't hear any of this from me. I understand, I said quickly. Your identity is safe. I don't even know your name. Exactly. That's for the best, she said. Now, check your inbox. If I uncover anything else, I'll let you know. Best of luck. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, hands unsteady, then scrambled for my laptop. A message waited in the Gmail account I'd secretly created after our last argument. Just in case. The email was from a burner address. My heart pounded as I opened it. Several documents and image files were attached. Hotel invoices from cities like Raleigh, Chicago, and Honolulu. All places Becky had recently claimed were for work travel. Each receipt showed Becky and Garrity listed as either staying in connecting rooms or, more often, sharing one. The bookings had been handled by Bickman, and Burnham's travel office, clearly logged as business expenses. Another file contained internal company emails. A senior partner, Camille, coordinating travel schedules, booking conferences for Jason and Rebecca. But the tone of the messages said it all. One thread between office managers casually joked, Be sure room 1101's stocked with champagne for our lovebirds, LOL. The nausea came on fast, a sickening wave of betrayal. They all knew. They covered for it. Worse, they laughed about it. One PDF listed overnight usage of the firm's downtown corporate apartments, first quarter. And there it was, Rebecca Sullivan, Jason Garrity. Frequent entries, some overlapping, some sequential. Right there in plain text. Any denial I'd clung to died on the spot. She'd been cheating. For over a year at least, deceit layered on top of more lies. I don't even recall drifting off that night. I must have sat there on the couch, eyes fixed on the screen as exhaustion quietly overtook me. When I awoke to my phone alarm the next morning, the weight of what I now knew settled in hard. Becky was already gone. No note, no words, just gone to work like any other day. I walked Haley to the bus stop, barely able to meet her gaze, worried she'd sensed the storm inside me. At the office, I was a shell of myself. Danny asked if I was feeling under the weather. I just muttered something about a rough night. But really, I was barely keeping it together. Now that I had the facts, I needed a strategy. By that afternoon, Perry Desmond, an investigator I'd contacted, had returned my call. I met him in his modest office above a strip mall. His $5,000 retainer hit my savings account like a punch, but it felt justified. That money was originally for indulgences, side projects Becky and I might have pursued. Now it was being used to uncover her truth. I gave Desmond a summary, my suspicions about Garrity, the hints I'd found. But I didn't mention the anonymous informant's cash. Not yet. I wanted to compare notes, verify everything through separate channels. Desmond nodded, confident. "I'll find out what's going on, Mr. Sullivan." One way or another. I believed him. The days that followed were torturous. I had to smile, talk, behave like nothing had changed, while inside I was cracking. It was an endless performance. One I never asked to audition for. I moved into the den permanently, using back pain as an excuse. Told her I didn't want to disturb her sleep with my tossing. She didn't object. That told me enough. I also went to get tested. STDs, something I never imagined doing in what was supposed to be a committed marriage. Everything came back clean, though the doctor scheduled a few follow-ups to be safe. The very idea enraged me, getting poked and prodded because my wife had betrayed our vows. The woman who had called me, I began calling her MC in my mind, checked in a few more times. Brief phone calls, more puzzle pieces. She confirmed what she'd hinted earlier. Becky and Garrity had agreed to cool it for a while. Keep things less obvious. She explained how the corporate apartments worked, how everyone turned a blind eye. Once I asked her outright why she wouldn't just tell me who she was. I told her I might be able to protect her. She said anonymity was her best shield. I respected that, and honestly, knowing the names involved, I couldn't blame her. My routine became robotic. Go to work, act normal, spend evenings half present with Haley, avoiding Becky as much as I could. Haley noticed something. Kids always do. But maybe she chalked it up to the tension that had already been simmering between her parents. I tried to shield her from the worst of it. But I know I didn't always succeed. One evening, while we were relaxing on the couch watching a superhero flick, a scene came up where the protagonist's wife kissed him goodbye before he headed off on a dangerous mission. Out of nowhere, I felt a sting in my eyes and a lump rise in my throat. I pretended to clear my throat and walked into the kitchen, trying to collect myself. Haley followed me, wrapping her arms around me in silence. I held her tight, overwhelmed with gratitude and heartbreak. She sensed something was seriously off, but bless her, she didn't demand answers. Not then. I'd already made up my mind to wait until Desmond's findings were in before taking any steps, before confronting Becky or making anything official. I wanted undeniable proof from a professional source to back up what MC had already dug up. Still, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't itching to confront her. There were nights I couldn't sleep, imagining myself catching her off guard, demanding the truth. I pictured her fumbling for words, maybe even making some tearful confession. Other nights, my mind drifted to Jason Garrity, fantasizing about breaking his perfect smile with a punch or seeing him in handcuffs for something, anything. That part surprised me. Apparently, the prosecutor in me couldn't help craving some kind of justice, even for a betrayal that wasn't technically criminal. During that purgatory of waiting, I confided in only one person, Rob McAllister, my boss and friend. I didn't go to him until I'd made my decision, divorce, so it wasn't just talk. Rob's a salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, tough exterior but decent to the core. He'd been through his own painful divorce years ago. I stepped into his office one afternoon, shut the door, and laid it out plainly. "Rob, I might need some personal time soon. I'm probably going to divorce Rebecca." He looked up fast, eyes narrowing. "Jesus, Mike. That look on your face, I don't like it. What the hell happened?" I gave him the abbreviated version. Told him I suspected she was cheating, that I had someone looking into it, and it might get complicated, especially since the other guy was a well-known lawyer at B. I promised I'd do everything I could to avoid dragging the office into it, but wanted to be transparent in case things got messy. I even said I'd step down if he thought it would protect the DA's reputation. Rob leaned back in his chair, arms folded, his expression dark. When I finished, he exhaled through his nose and gave his head a slow shake. "First of all, I'm real damn sorry, Tomcat." He calls all the ADAs by call signs from Top Gun. Mine's Tomcat. "Second, you're not going anywhere. I'm not losing one of my best prosecutors because some slick-haired douche from B couldn't keep it in his pants." His voice had a growl to it. "As long as you don't do anything stupid, like slash his tires in front of a news crew, I couldn't care less." Frankly, those B-firm bastards could use a wake-up call. They act untouchable. Maybe it's time someone showed them they're not. He gave me a nod that felt like a handshake. Handle what you need to handle. Just keep me in the loop so I'm not blindsided. And if you ever need to scream into a glass of whiskey at O'Malley's, you know where to find me. I've been there, Mike. My door's always open. I walked out of that office feeling a little stronger. That kind of backing, quiet, firm, no strings, meant everything. It solidified my decision. I wasn't alone in this, no matter how ugly it got. A couple of weeks after I brought him on, Desmond delivered. Big time. He sent a text. Got what you need. We met in a quiet corner booth at a steakhouse during the slow afternoon hours. He handed over a manila envelope like we were spies in a Cold War thriller. Inside was a damning collection of proof. Photos of Rebecca and Jason leaving the downtown firm's private apartments at strange hours. One series had them walking out around 3 p.m. on a weekday, her hair disheveled, both of them glancing around nervously. Another showed them entering a suite late Friday evening and not re-emerging for hours. There was a thumb drive, too, videos of them sitting close at a hotel bar, then disappearing into an elevator together. I didn't ask how Desmond got it. Some of it looked like security footage, probably acquired with a quiet bribe or two. He'd even managed to get copies of their texts. That part left me speechless. Maybe he cloned her phone? Maybe he gained access during surveillance? I didn't ask. The messages were graphic, explicit even. Becky had been telling Jason how she couldn't stop replaying the feeling of his hands on her skin. Jason responded with messages like, "Last night was unforgettable. I'm already counting the hours until we meet again." Reading through it turned my stomach, but I forced myself to get through every line, etching the words into my memory like scars. Armor, really, to shield myself from any lingering softness I might feel for her later. Desmond stayed his usual calm and collected self. But at one point, his voice lowered slightly with empathy. "This part's tough, Mike. Take your time." I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost, but I squared my shoulders, voice steady. "No, this is what I needed. I'm good." He leaned in, eyes sharp. "I uncovered a few more things you'll want to know." Apparently, this hadn't been some recent mistake. They'd been sneaking around for almost a year, starting with late nights at work, then escalating. And here's the kicker. Jason's married, too. His wife's name was Elaine, 2 kids. Desmond wasn't sure if she had any clue, but he'd pulled up her background just in case. "If you ever want to go that route, I've got the details." I nodded slowly, letting it sink in. 2 families torn apart in a single blow. Somehow, the fact that Jason had a wife and kids made my rage burn hotter. He wasn't just some wandering bachelor looking for a fling. He was betraying not just my trust, but his own family's too. That level of audacity. "I might," I said under my breath, already plotting my next steps. Desmond passed me another folder, a separate one this time. "There's something in here you could use as leverage." He laid out a stack of expense reports, highlighting entries where Jason had billed the firm, or in some cases government clients, for travel or consulting that suspiciously overlapped with time spent with my wife. "He's been charging his little rendezvous to the firm," Desmond said, disgusted. "And if any of that crossed state lines or involved federal accounts, he might have wandered into light fraud territory." He looked at me pointedly. "Might be useful. If you're in the mood to get creative." For the first time in weeks, I felt the corner of my mouth twitch upward. A real grim smile, my first since the day everything shattered. "This is gold, Perry. I mean it. You've gone above and beyond." We shook hands. He gave a short nod, eyes hard. "Can't lie, cases like this, I get a bit of satisfaction from seeing the cheaters fall. I despise them." His jaw clenched for a second, maybe a flash of his own history. "If you need more, you know where to find me. Otherwise, good luck." With Desmond's documents and my contact's intel in hand, I finally felt like I was standing on solid ground. No more denial, no more lingering hope of fixing things. It had all been burned away, leaving only a cold, focused purpose. I was going to bring the whole damn thing crashing down. After I left the steakhouse, I sat in my car with the envelope beside me, took a few deep, steadying breaths. Grief rose up, grief for the marriage I thought I had, sorrow for Haley, pure fury at being treated like some disposable fool. But deeper than all that was resolve. They had plotted behind my back, kept their little affair alive while pretending everything was fine. Let them plan all they want. They had no idea who they'd just crossed. I'm an attorney. I know the rules of engagement. But I was also a husband and a father, betrayed and humiliated. And in that moment I swore I'd fight dirty if I had to, not just burn it all down. I'd salt the earth so nothing could grow back. That firm, that man, and yes, my marriage. None of them would escape untouched. The next day I started mapping everything out like a case file. Building strategy, predicting counterattacks. By Saturday, I rang up an old friend from law school, Michael Chen. He'd gone into civil litigation, the messy kind. The crazier the case, the more he liked it. We met over barbecue, and I laid out a hypothetical. What can someone do legally when their spouse has an affair and others helped it happen? Texas doesn't allow lawsuits for alienation of affection. Mike confirmed it. Only a few states let you sue the homewrecker. Not here? I wasn't done. Okay, but what about fraud? The firm, and that man, completely misled me. They made it seem like all those late nights and out-of-town trips were strictly professional. Meanwhile, I was stuck shouldering extra responsibilities at home, believing it was all temporary. I was told that once she made partner, we'd both reap the rewards. I upheld my end. They didn't. Now the payoff they promised? Gone. I knew it sounded absurd, maybe even unhinged, but by then I wasn't exactly thinking straight. When I first brought it up to Mike, he actually chuckled. You can't sue someone for missing out on intimacy, dude. But I wasn't joking. It's not about that. It's about the loss of partnership, companionship, shared duties, emotional support. Legally, they call it loss of consortium. They convinced me to go along with all of it under false pretenses. He looked at me differently then, an eyebrow rising as it hit him that I was dead serious. You're thinking about suing a law firm because they basically enabled your wife's affair? Exactly. It's not just betrayal, it's deception with consequences. Mike leaned back, the wheels clearly turning in his head. Well, he said, fraud needs 4 elements. Someone lies knowingly, intends to mislead, the victim relies on that lie, and it causes real harm. He started laying it out like a case. So the firm falsely represented your wife's late hours and travel as business-related. That lie was intentional, maybe just to keep you out of the way. You trusted them, made sacrifices, picked up the slack at home, and in return, you were blindsided, emotionally and financially wrecked. He paused. Am I following? I nodded, then leaned in. There's more. I have reason to believe the partners weren't just passively aware, they helped cover it up. Actively. Then we're talking conspiracy, he said, eyes narrowing. And if you stretch it, hell, maybe even a RICO case. The Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act? I asked. Usually for mob stuff, sure. But legally it can apply to any structured ongoing fraud. The bar's high, but the threat alone might scare them. Mike's face lit up with a kind of fierce intrigue. That's bold. Really bold. They'll almost definitely try to get it tossed, but even dragging them into court could do damage. They won't want this public. And discovery? He grinned. Discovery could be brutal. We were both picturing it now. Emails, deposition transcripts, sworn statements from senior partners squirming under oath. You know what? He said. Screw it. I'm in. Worst case, we make them sweat. But listen, he continued, this'll be on contingency. I'll take a cut if we win, but upfront costs, experts, filings, admin, those are on you. I've got it, I said. We had money saved for a vacation. Anniversary trip we're obviously not taking now. I can free up $20,000. That's my war chest. There was something grimly satisfying about using that money, meant for memories, to launch a scorched earth campaign instead. We toasted with our glasses of iced tea and agreed to get the ball rolling that same week. I handed over relevant documents from Desmond and the contact codenamed MC, trimming out anything that might identify her directly. Mike's reaction was nearly gleeful. This is daytime soap-level scandal, he said. But these internal messages, those emails, they're not just turning a blind eye, they're part of it. Even if we lose, they'll hate having this dragged into daylight. That night I did something I had dreaded but knew was right. Using some public records and a few leads from Desmond, I found Elaine Garrity, Jason's wife, and got her number. I wrestled with the decision. Should I pull her into this? But ultimately, I felt she deserved to know, to protect herself and her kids, just like I was trying to do. And frankly, having someone on the inside could prove valuable when this blew up. When I called, she was instantly guarded. "Who is this?" I told her I was Rebecca's husband. That seemed to temper her, though she stayed cautious. I gently explained that I had evidence her husband and mine were involved, and that I thought she had a right to see it. She didn't argue. She asked to review the proof. Smart. We met the next day at a quiet cafe in her neighborhood. Elaine was composed, dignified, a woman in her 40s doing her best to keep control. I handed her a tablet loaded with sanitized material, nothing too graphic. A few texts. A photo of Jason and Rebecca kissing outside an elevator. Even so, it crushed her. She cried in silence before excusing herself to the restroom, where she stayed for what felt like ages. When she came back, the tears were gone, but her face was steely. "What's your plan?" she asked, voice low. I told her, divorce, and a civil lawsuit against both the firm and Jason. She took that in. Then, to my surprise, she leaned in. "We coordinate," she said. "Serve the papers, all of them, at once. Make it sting. Make it public." She'd seen Jason's calendar. The firm's big holiday gala was 3 weeks out, mid-December. Perfect timing. I let out a low, appreciative whistle. She was ahead of me, sharper than I'd given her credit for. It hadn't even crossed my mind to align it with a major event. But once she laid it out, I was sold. Everyone would be there. Jason, Rebecca, all the firm's partners. An ideal stage for maximum humiliation. She gave a fierce nod, eyes flashing with determination. If they were looking for a fight, they'd get one. She already had her legal team working on the divorce filing, and a court order to freeze joint assets. Her father, a former judge who'd never liked Jason, was now helping strategize a brutal legal takedown. She allowed herself a grim little smirk. Honestly, none of her family had ever warmed up to Jason. Her dad had insisted on a bulletproof prenup. Now both her parents were eager to help her nail Jason to the wall. She'd be financially secure. What she wanted was to make him feel the burn of betrayal, and I admired her fire. We decided to coordinate serving the legal papers during the firm's big holiday event. She wouldn't attend. Why risk a public meltdown in front of her kids? Instead, she'd fake being ill that evening to keep him flying solo, then use that window to change the locks and box up his belongings. She even made a dark joke about tossing everything onto the lawn. I pitched the idea of donating it all to charity and saving the receipt for taxes, which got a quick, bitter laugh out of her. In that laugh, I could hear both our grief. As we wrapped up, I asked if she was truly okay. She exhaled deeply. "Not yet," she admitted, "but I will be. Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry we both ended up here." We exchanged a long, silent look, an unspoken bond forming between us. With Elaine fully on board, the plan was in motion. The following weeks passed in a haze of preparation. I had my attorney finalize the divorce paperwork, a basic no-fault petition, though we kept the option to add adultery if needed for leverage. Texas is no fault by default, but options are weapons. I reached out to an off-duty sheriff's deputy I knew, someone who could deliver the papers without drawing attention. Meanwhile, Mike worked on drafting a lawsuit against the firm and its leadership for collusion and fraud. We hired a professional process service to send agents into the gala disguised as catering staff, ready to hit multiple targets at once. Mike found the whole concept theatrically excessive, but also undeniably effective. Jason and Rebecca weren't the only ones getting served. We wanted the senior partners caught in the blast, too. During those days, I kept up the act of the clueless, content husband at home. It was maddening, surreal, but I had one last role to play. The weekend of the firm's holiday party arrived. That Saturday, Rebecca was unusually chipper, obsessing over which dress to wear like a teenager prepping for prom. She had no clue her magical night was about to implode. Fortunately, Haley had plans to stay over at a friend's house to finish a school project. She'd be safely out of the way. Then a wicked idea sparked in my mind. Why not fully disarm Rebecca by pretending I wanted to reconcile right before the gala? She'd been frustrated by my distance lately, my separate sleeping arrangements. Now and then she'd made a few tentative moves, some flirty touches, attempts at small talk. I'd kept things cold but polite. Tonight, I'd flip the narrative. Draw her in, about an hour before she had to leave. She stood in front of the mirror, slipping into a deep burgundy cocktail dress, elegant and eye-catching. I approached from behind and slid my arms gently around her waist. She startled slightly, caught off guard. I hadn't voluntarily touched her in ages. "You look amazing," I murmured against her neck, brushing her skin with a soft kiss. She let out a flustered little laugh. "Well, thank you, that's surprising." She leaned lightly back into me. My hands traced along her sides. My stomach turned at the gesture, but I kept it up, tapping into the memory of how I used to feel. She still smelled intoxicating. My body reacted despite everything. Flesh can be a fool. "I've been thinking," I whispered. "Maybe I've been too harsh. Maybe it wasn't fair the way I've held that night against you." I meant the evening before her Chicago trip. The night she brushed me off and started this unraveling. She turned around in my arms, brows drawn together, trying to read me. "Mike, are you saying—" I gave her a half smile, sheepish. "I miss you," I said softly. "I'm exhausted by the Cold War between us. I want to fix things." The lies came easier than I expected. May God forgive me. I even managed a few convincing tears. Thinking of Haley's pain made it easy. "I'm in if you are," I said. Her expression shifted rapidly, first surprise, then relief, and finally, unmistakable happiness. Genuine happiness. She cradled my face with trembling hands. "Oh, sweetheart," and Dada. "This is everything I wanted to hear. I've missed you more than I can say. I'm sorry for how terrible I've been. I swear I'll make it right. We'll fix this. We will fix us." Her words came fast, almost tripping over themselves. I quieted her with a kiss, our first real kiss in what felt like forever. She kissed me back with hunger, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. It took everything in me not to recoil at the thought of where those lips might have been recently. Still, for a fleeting moment, I let myself feel it. That old, familiar pull. Not quite the same, but close. Muscle memory mixed with longing. I pulled back, offering a teasing grin. "What do you say we pick this up later tonight after the party?" I added a suggestive eyebrow raise, the kind that used to make her giggle. And she did. A bright, unguarded laugh I hadn't heard in ages. Her voice dropped to a sultry purr. "So, this means what I think it means?" She echoed the very words I once used during our last big fight. I gave her a sly smile. "If you're thinking it means I'm going to blow your mind tonight, then absolutely." She was beaming. "Finally over your little tantrum, huh?" she teased, running her fingers gently along my jaw. "Haley's at a friend's and won't be back until tomorrow, so it's just us. No rules tonight," she said with a wink. This playful, flirty version of her had been gone for a long time. A shame it was far too late. I chuckled. "Funny you mentioned tame. I was thinking of using one when I have my way with you later." The line was terrible. She loved it anyway. She bit her bottom lip, leaned in, and kissed me hard. "Hold that thought," she whispered against my mouth. "I really have to go or I'll be late." She paused at the door, eyes glinting. "But damn, I can't wait for tonight. Don't you dare fall asleep on me." She wagged her finger playfully. "I'll be wide awake." "You can count on that," I replied, giving her backside a light pat as she walked off. She grabbed her clutch, tossed me a kiss, and stepped out, a new bounce in her step I hadn't seen in years. "I love you," she called out as she left. It took me a breath too long to respond. "Love you too," I forced out, the words catching briefly on the way up. Once her car disappeared down the street, the smile faded from my face, replaced by a grim, cold expression. The performance had nearly made me sick, but it had done its job. If she'd felt any guilt or suspicion, I had washed it away. She was heading to the party with her guard completely down. I felt like I was leading a double life, one moment affectionate and tender, the next calculating and ruthless. I despised that she could still stir any real feeling in me, even now. It would be so much easier if I could hate her entirely, but people are complicated. Emotions don't just vanish when betrayal enters the picture. There would probably always be a piece of me that loved the person she used to be. But who she is now, that woman I was about to utterly dismantle, I changed into a suit. I wasn't attending the gala, of course, wasn't invited, but I needed to be close enough to witness the explosion firsthand. The plan was already in motion. Elaine had arranged for multiple process servers, disguised as catering staff, to infiltrate the event. At exactly 8 p.m., right in the middle of the celebration, with glasses clinking and the whole crowd present, they would strike all at once. One would hand Rebecca the divorce documents. Another would serve Jason with both divorce papers and a restraining order. The rest would deliver civil suit summons to the senior partners and to the firm itself. All of it would be discreetly filmed by miniature body cameras, capturing every stunned expression. Maybe we'd use the footage in court, maybe just for satisfaction. I drove into the city and parked a block away from the luxurious hotel hosting the event. The venue was pure elegance. The law firm had gone all out, securing 2 full levels of the Museum of Natural History to host an upscale holiday soiree amid ancient fossils and glittering gemstones. From where I stood, just beyond a side entrance, I could glimpse Houston's finest legal minds mingling beneath chandeliers, their formal wear sparkling in the light. I slipped into a back corridor where Therese, one of the lead process servers, waited with her phone in hand. She was coordinating her team of servers and had pulled up a live video from a body cam feed. She offered it to me without a word. 2 minutes, she murmured. On the screen, the event unfolded in real time. The banquet hall buzzed with chatter and laughter, waitstaff weaving through the crowd with silver trays. I spotted Rebecca right away. That burgundy dress, unmistakable. She stood among a circle of colleagues, one of whom was Jason Garrity. My jaw clenched. He had his arm lazily slung around her waist as they laughed at something Camille Bickman, Big B, was saying. Probably some self-important nonsense. The sheer arrogance of it. He wasn't just flirting. He was occupying a role that had once been mine, quite literally. I'd later find out he'd taken the dinner seat beside her, the one she once swore was mine. And she looked radiant. Her cheeks glowed, whether from champagne or the thrill of the evening, or maybe from our earlier bittersweet reunion. She probably thought she'd pulled off the impossible, rekindled her marriage, and still had her excitement on the side. That made what I was about to do all the sweeter. Therese's team was in position. I felt a charge run through me. From the feed, I heard a clear voice behind Rebecca. Jennifer Sullivan? Formal? Deliberate? She turned toward the server, still smiling. That's me. I have something for you, the server replied, holding out an envelope. Rebecca took it, her brows drawing in confusion. Through the clear top of the packet, the document's title was visible. Even with the grainy resolution, I saw her expression collapse, lips parted, eyes wide. The words were unmistakable. In the matter of the marriage of Rebecca Sullivan and Michael Sullivan, petition for divorce. Her head snapped up. Panic flared in her eyes. She started scanning the room like she expected me to be standing nearby. Just then, a second server tapped Jason on the shoulder. Jason Garrity? He blinked, still fixated on Rebecca, then turned. Yeah? You've been served. He was handed Elaine's divorce and TRO, temporary restraining order. The smug mask slipped from his face. He turned ghost pale, fingers trembling as he fumbled with the papers. Across the room, chaos was blooming. Other servers moved swiftly, addressing senior partners, even the firm's CFO. Confusion rippled through the crowd. I watched on the screen as Big B yanked a summons from a server's hand, certain it was a mistake, only to flush crimson when she realized it wasn't. People whispered, formed clusters. Eyes darted. Rebecca was staring at Jason now. I saw her mouth a silent, "Did you know?" Jason's head shook slowly, like someone waking up mid-nightmare. Then Camille stormed over, eyes blazing, clutching her own paperwork. She hissed something sharp at both of them. The mic didn't catch her words, but I could imagine the fury. They had detonated a scandal right in the middle of the firm's marquee event. And then the final blow. Another server climbed the steps to the podium where Victor Bickman was scheduled to speak. He picked up the microphone, cleared his throat, and announced loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, you have been served. The declaration echoed off the marble walls. That part hadn't been my idea. One of Teresa's team had taken some dramatic liberties, but I couldn't deny the flair. The feed grew shaky. Someone had likely knocked into the camera or security had intervened. Therese muttered a curse. But I'd seen enough. I handed the phone back to her, nodded my thanks, and slipped out into the crisp evening air. Outside, through the glass front of the museum, I could see the storm unfolding. People poured into the lobby, stunned, some staring at court documents, others already dialing phones. 2 security guards were locked in a futile argument with one of the servers, who calmly walked away, her task complete. Then Rebecca appeared. She was flanked by Camille and another senior partner, her face stricken. She clutched the divorce papers like a lifeline, eyes darting across the street as if she could sense I was out there somewhere, watching. She broke away from the others, pulling out her phone, making a call. Right on cue, mine began to vibrate. I let it ring. Another call. Then texts started pouring in. "Mike, please, where are you? I just got divorce papers. What is going on?" "We can fix this, please. This has to be a mistake. I love you. Please answer." I turned off the phone. Still hidden beneath the trees across the road, I watched for a moment longer. Jason had stepped outside now, looking dazed. Then I spotted Elaine's parents, her father, the judge, unmistakable from the photos she'd shown me. He was in Jason's face instantly. The look on the judge's face could have melted steel. Jason looked like a scolded teenager, stripped of his swagger. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something close to peace. I slipped away unnoticed, a solitary figure vanishing into the night. There was a strange, almost intoxicating thrill in it, adrenaline, vindication, something raw and electric. For the first time in months, I felt unmistakably alive. On the drive back, my thoughts kept drifting to Haley. Her involvement was only just beginning. What would she do when the truth finally surfaced? That thought cast a shadow over my momentary sense of victory. No matter how justified I felt, I knew my daughter's reality was about to be torn apart. And Becky? Despite everything, a small part of me feared she might spiral, do something reckless. But I reminded myself she wasn't alone. She had her family, probably a few loyal friends and a decent job, at least for the time being. She'd make it through. Once home, I poured a generous glass of the whiskey I'd been saving for something that mattered. This qualified. I didn't have to wait long. Barely an hour passed before I heard tires screeching into the driveway. A door slammed. Footsteps pounded toward the house. The front door burst open. I hadn't locked it. She stood there, hair wild, makeup smeared, eyes red and wet. It was obvious she'd come straight from the disaster I'd just set in motion. "Mike!" she cried, stepping inside, breathless. She spotted me in the living room, sitting calmly with a drink in hand. "Thank God," she said. "Mike, what's going on?" "Why? How could you do this?" In her shaking hand were the divorce papers. I stared at her, emotionless. Whatever masks we'd both worn were gone now. A long silence stretched between us, just enough to unsettle her. I watched the fear creep into her expression. In a voice void of heat, I asked, "So, how was the party?" She blinked, clearly thrown. The party?" She fumbled. "It was a disaster. Because of whatever this was." She stepped closer, switching gears, her voice unsteady. "Baby, please. Talk to me. This is too much. I don't get it." Her voice cracked into sobs. I slowly tilted my glass, watching the liquid rotate lazily. "Oh, I think you do get it," I said, cold and deliberate. "Or should I lay it out for you?" I met her eyes. "You've been sleeping with Jason. Again and again. For over a year." She froze. "You looked me in the eye and lied, repeatedly. You threw away our marriage and our family for your secret fling." I leaned forward slightly, my tone sharpening. "And now, Rebecca, now you're facing the consequences." She flinched at the way I said her name. I only ever used Rebecca when I was furious. Her voice broke. "No, that's not what it was." "It was a mistake. I cut her off, raising a hand. Don't you dare lie to me again. I said it with quiet intensity. I know. Everything. Her breath caught. Her mouth hung open, eyes frantically searching my face for any sign that I might be bluffing. Everything? She whispered. I nodded slowly. I've got the proof, emails, photos, even recordings. You bragging to Cassie about how Jason lights your fire and how you sneak around just to feel excited. I saw the blood drain from her face. The mention of Cassie hit hard. She realized it then. Cassie had betrayed her. Thank you, Desmond's little recorder. Rebecca staggered backward, reaching for the wall to steady herself. I, she began. Then her expression twisted with desperation and fury. You spied on me? You invaded my privacy? She was scrambling now. Don't, I growled, cutting her off again. Don't you dare try to flip this on me. I stood up, the tension in the room snapping tight. You forfeited your privacy the second you decided to cheat, to lie, to make me the fool. She crumbled then, collapsing to the floor in tears, her hands covering her face. I'm sorry, she kept saying through sobs. I'm so sorry. I looked down at her, detached, empty. The irony didn't escape me. Hours earlier, I'd been on my knees in front of her, desperate to save what we had. Now she was the one on the floor, pleading. Funny how fast things can turn. After a few minutes of her crying and begging, please, we can fix this, we can fix it, I'd heard enough. Get up, I said, voice low but firm. She didn't move. Louder now. Get off the floor, now. Startled, she looked up at me, then slowly obeyed, rising to shaky feet. I stepped in closer. My voice dropped again to an icy calm. The night before you left for Chicago. Do you remember what you said when I tried to be close to you? She hesitated, caught off guard by the abrupt shift in conversation. Maybe this wasn't the most pressing matter, but I needed it out. I couldn't carry it anymore. I'm not sure, she stammered. You told me, I pressed on, my voice sharpening with resentment. Just finish and get it over with. That's where we were by then, right? Me. A task to complete, a box to check off your list. Her eyes widened, the horror on her face mixing with shame. Oh God, Mike, I never meant... I didn't let her finish. That was the moment I knew, I said, my voice low but bitter. You saw me as an inconvenience, a burden. You didn't want me anymore, not really. You'd already found your fire somewhere else. I could barely look at her as I went on. You had the audacity to mock me, call me boring, accuse me of being some 9-to-5 drone. Meanwhile, you were screwing that arrogant bastard. She broke down, choking on her tears. Please, stop, please. No, I growled. You need to hear this. You will hear all of it. For a year, a whole year, you walked all over me. You broke every vow we made. You stomped on the life we built together. I loved you. I trusted you. And you turned me into a damn joke. My voice cracked then, emotion breaking through the fury. Our daughter can barely look at you. She's disgusted by what you've done. And before you ask, yes, she knows. Becky gasped, panic rising. You told Hannah? She's known something was wrong for a long time. She's not stupid. Smarter than either of us, probably. And you know what? She didn't need me to spell it out. She put the pieces together long before I did. Becky looked like I had physically struck her. No, she can't. She did. She saw some guy drop you off months ago. You were acting weird about it. She may be young, but she's not blind. Haley had told me about that day. The blonde guy in the silver car. Jim, I think. She remembered. She noticed. Becky buried her face in her hands. Oh God, my baby girl, she sobbed, repeating it like a prayer gone wrong. What did I do? What have I done? I gave her a minute, let her fall apart. I'd already said most of what I needed to. There was a strange stillness inside me, like the storm had passed. I watched her crumble, the woman I used to idolize, and all I felt was a flicker of pity beneath the heavier weight of justified anger. At last I spoke, calmly this time. You keep asking why I'm doing this like it's not completely obvious. You chose him, over and over again. You made that decision. Well, now you get to live with it. I won't stay in a marriage with someone who betrayed me so completely. who chose lies and selfishness again and again. Her hands fell from her face. She stepped forward, desperation in every movement. "I'll leave the job," she said quickly. "I'll block his number. I'll never speak to him again. Please, I'll do therapy, counseling, whatever it takes." She reached out to touch me. I backed away and raised my hands. "No," I said, clear and final. "You don't get to fix this. You destroyed it." I looked at her with a deep sadness, genuine and raw. "I used to believe we'd grow old together, that nothing could break us. You were my everything, Beck, my person, my home. But you threw it all away like it meant nothing. So no, this isn't something we can salvage. I deserve more than this. And Haley, she deserves to see what real love looks like, not this poisoned version we've become." She shook her head, muttering, "No, no, no," under her breath, then suddenly lunged toward me as if to wrap her arms around me. I stepped to the side and held out an arm to stop her, gently but firmly. "Don't touch me." She stumbled slightly, catching herself against the arm of the couch. The look on her face, I won't pretend it didn't hurt to see. It was devastation, pure and unfiltered, but I didn't let myself waver. "I've hired a lawyer," I said. "You'll be getting the paperwork soon. Since you're earning more, and I'm the one caring for Haley, it's only fair that you contribute with child support. I won't ask for spousal maintenance, even though I'd be entitled to it after your infidelity. I don't want anything else from you, just the chance for both of us to move on." She opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "We'll work out a parenting arrangement that keeps Haley's needs first. But you should know, she's been very clear about wanting to live with me. Your little firebrand acted out in every way possible. Daily detentions, sneaking out constantly, just to get under your skin. She stopped when I agreed to let her stay with me while we sorted through this. She's heartbroken and furious with you, Rebecca." Becky collapsed onto the couch like someone had pulled the floor out from under her, her face twisted with sorrow. "This isn't happening," she whispered. "It's like some terrible dream." "Mike, please. We can still fix this. Let's wake up and try again." Her eyes were full of desperation and fragile hope. For a second, I felt myself falter. Seeing her like this, the mother of my child, unraveling before me, stirred something in me. But then I remembered all the nights I waited up for her, sick with worry, only to find out she'd been in someone else's bed. I remembered Haley's quiet sobs as she asked why her mother didn't seem to love us anymore. And with that, any hesitation I had turned to steel. I lowered myself so we were eye level, the way you might when trying to explain something to a child. She instinctively reached out, maybe to touch my face, but I caught her hand gently and laid it back in her lap. "I need you to really hear me," I said, softly but firmly. "I've already forgiven you." Her head jerked up in surprise. "But not for your sake," I continued. "For mine. I don't want to live my life weighed down by resentment. I forgive you because something inside you must have been broken to do what you did. I hope someday you face that and find some kind of peace." She opened her mouth again, but I pressed on, my hand lightly holding hers. It was cold in my grasp, lifeless, like I was holding on to something already gone. "Forgiving you doesn't mean I'm forgetting or pretending this didn't happen. And it certainly doesn't mean we're getting back together. It just means I won't let the love I once had for you fester into something poisonous. For 17 years, you were my wife, and together we raised an incredible daughter. I'll always treasure the good parts of us, the memories that deserve to be remembered. But the betrayal, the damage you caused, that I'm letting go of now, for my own sanity. Do you understand?" Tears slid silently down her cheeks as she gave the faintest nod. I let go of her hand and stood up. "Haley needs me tonight. I'll be staying at my apartment in her room. And honestly, I need her too. You should probably stay somewhere else for now, your parents' place maybe." She looked around the room, dazed, like she didn't recognize the place anymore. "This was our home," she murmured. "How am I supposed to just not be here?" "You can come gather your things when Haley's at school," I said, tone even. I don't want her to witness anything dramatic. We owe her at least that. Let's be adults, for her sake. She's all that matters now. I walked to the door and pulled it open, motioning for her to leave. It might have seemed cold, but there was nothing more to be said. Her presence only twisted the knife. Becky stood on shaky legs. She took one uncertain step toward me. Mikey, is this really the end? For real? There was a hollowness in my chest as I responded, yes. It's been over since the day you chose to be with someone else. The rest was just me catching up. And now it's your turn. Her eyes fluttered shut, her body swaying slightly. For a moment I thought she might faint, but she gathered herself, slowly walking toward the door. She paused in the doorway just inches from me. The scent of her perfume lingered faintly, mixed with a trace of Jason's cologne clinging to her dress. My stomach turned. She looked up at me, her gaze a mix of sorrow, longing, and deep regret. I love you, she said, barely audible. I never stopped. I know it's too late, but I'm so sorry. I really am. A tear rolled down my cheek, no matter how hard I tried to stop it. I gave her a quiet nod and turned away. Goodbye, Rebecca. Her name caught in my throat, splintering as it came out. She stepped out into the night, unsteady and silent. I shut the door behind her, locked it, then leaned against it, sliding to the floor. The sobs broke out of me uncontrollably. I sat there on the threshold of what used to be our home and wept like something wounded, shattered, but not destroyed. The weeks that followed were intense and relentless. As I'd expected, word of our messy divorce and my lawsuit against her spread fast through Houston's legal community. Her firm partners were livid, both humiliated and blindsided. Within days, several high-profile clients had severed ties with them. Knowing I played a role in that reckoning, that felt like justice. The firm launched into full-blown PR crisis mode, but the details in the lawsuit were too juicy to completely bury. No spin team could scrub the headlines clean. Elite law firm implicated in ethics scandal, screamed one prominent legal blog. It was a major blow to their image, which frankly was part of my intention. Of course, my own career hit a few bumps as well. Assistant district attorneys don't typically sue high-powered firms in open court. It raised eyebrows. Luckily, the DA had my back, largely thanks to Rob's unapologetic, let him stir the pot attitude. Some co-workers started treating me differently, some with sympathy, others with thinly veiled amusement. But I didn't let it get to me. My focus was locked on supporting Haley and managing the legal fallout. Haley's emotions were all over the map. On one hand, she was relieved that the truth had surfaced and we no longer had to hide our relationship. On the other, she was furious with her mother. The betrayal cut deep. She refused to speak to Rebecca for weeks. I tried gently to suggest she leave a door open, but I didn't press. She needed space to heal. Therapy was definitely in the cards for her, probably for me too. I eventually learned that Rebecca had indeed resigned from B not long after the disaster of the holiday party. It didn't do much to salvage her career, though. Her standing in the legal world was in tatters. No prestigious firm would take a chance on her now. Word reached me, through the grapevine and a burner email from MC, that she'd landed an in-house counsel gig at a local company, far less prestigious and lower paying. That suited me just fine. She'd need income to meet her child support obligations eventually. Our divorce proceeded faster than anyone expected. Rebecca didn't have much fight left in her. She delegated almost everything to her attorney, a guy named, of all things, Ken Lovelace. We mediated the terms. I'd have primary custody of Haley, and Rebecca would get generous visitation rights, which Haley could choose to take up when she felt ready. We split the assets without much fuss. I got the house, though I soon decided to sell it, too many ghosts, and downsized to a smaller home for just the two of us. Rebecca kept her retirement fund, her car, and a few other personal assets. I wasn't out to take her to the cleaners. All I wanted was her fair share of support for Haley. At one mediation session, we ended up sitting alone while our lawyers stepped out. She looked like a shell of the woman I'd once known, hollow-eyed, pale, clearly running on zero sleep. I stayed polite, calm. She barely spoke, agreeing to whatever seemed fair. At one point, in a soft voice, she said, "Thanks for not trying to destroy me financially and on top of everything else." She didn't finish the thought. I exhaled. "I never wanted to destroy you," I said. "I just needed out, so both of us could finally move on. And maybe to prove that actions have consequences. I'm not out for revenge now. I just want peace." She nodded, eyes glassy with tears. "You deserve to be happy. I hope you find it again." It hurt too much to respond with anything deep. I just said, "You too," without much emotion. The civil suit against B dragged on longer, but it did what it was meant to do. Discovery was brutal. Mike made sure we pulled every internal email, and he deposed several of their partners. What we uncovered was explosive. Multiple instances of internal affairs swept under the rug, hush money paid to aggrieved spouses or employees. The culture of that firm was rotten, driven by money and completely devoid of ethics. Backed into a corner and desperate to avoid a public trial, the partners finally caved and offered a settlement. I didn't walk away with millions, but after paying the legal team, I cleared around $600,000. That was enough to fund Haley's college education and give us a financial reset. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was watching B bleed. They lost more senior lawyers after the scandal, and the aura of invincibility they once had never quite returned. As for Jason Garrity, karma had a sharp sense of timing. Buried in the documents was proof that he'd billed hours he spent with Rebecca, personal hours, as legal work for a federal client. That, my friends, is outright fraud. I passed the evidence to a contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office. They didn't brush it aside. Jason ended up facing federal charges under the False Claims Act. He cut a deal, pled guilty, got 6 months in federal prison, and paid a hefty fine. The cherry on top? He surrendered his law license to dodge a disbarment hearing. His career in law, over. While he was behind bars, I sent him a note through his lawyer, just one line. "Still not bored of locking up the scum? Yeah, maybe a low blow, but man, it felt satisfying." Haley's reaction when I told her? "Forget that jerk," she said without a hint of restraint. I gave her a half-hearted reminder to mind her language, but honestly, I was right there with her. She grinned and revised her words. "Copulate that sanitary butt-wiping product," which cracked me up so hard I actually laughed, genuinely, for the first time in who knows how long. And so did she. It felt like the start of healing. A few years have passed since then. Haley made it through adolescence with a kind of quiet strength. She's back in contact with her mother, although that took time and space. Rebecca spiraled into a dark patch after everything blew up, especially once Haley basically froze her out for over a year, aside from a few polite exchanges. Eventually, therapy and the slow passage of time allowed a fragile bridge to start forming again. By the time Haley reached her senior year, she began including her mother in school functions again. Rebecca's humility and her consistent efforts to be present, without pushing, softened some of the distance. They're not best friends or anything. Haley shares more with my wife now than with Rebecca, but there's civility and a functional kind of peace between them. Speaking of my wife, funny how life throws gifts at you when you're least expecting them. A couple of years after my divorce, fate introduced me to Lauren, a teacher at Haley's high school. We met at one of Haley's field hockey games. Lauren's son was on the boys' soccer team, also attending. No fireworks, no drama, just a steady, quiet connection. Turns out Lauren had also weathered betrayal. She caught her husband, quite literally, in bed with his affair partner, who, to add insult to injury, ended up pregnant. So, understandably, we both approached things with caution. We took our time. Wounded people aren't quick to trust. But slowly, something solid and real began to grow between us. She understood my scars, and I understood hers. We made a vow early on, one shot at love, one chance. If we ever felt ourselves straying, we'd confront it directly, or part ways with dignity. That promise has never needed to be tested. We've now been married for a year. Roberta, or Rob, as most people still call her, the district attorney who once helped prosecute my ex-wife's affair partner, gave an unforgettable toast at our wedding. She joked that Lauren was tying the knot with a middle-aged Eagle Scout. Lauren fired back without missing a beat. He better stay that way unless he wants to walk out of here in one piece. The room erupted. Even Haley teased that when Lauren and I lock eyes, there's still fire between us. She's not wrong. That love is honest and bright. Sometimes I sit back and marvel at how strangely things worked out. In a perfect version of my life, Rebecca and I would have stayed happily married. But that ideal shattered, and somehow from the wreckage a different, perhaps even richer, life emerged. Lauren and I built a blended family that I treasure. Her son and my daughter eventually bonded like siblings, though it took a little time at first. During Haley's late teens, those emotionally intense, pivotal years, Lauren filled the maternal role Rebecca had stepped away from. That turned out to be one of the hardest truths for Rebecca to face. Watching Haley attached to Lauren brought on a wave of depression for her. I heard bits and pieces, some from Haley, some from Rebecca's parents. Apparently, the day Haley told her mom that Lauren would be taking her prom dress shopping, Rebecca checked herself into a psychiatric facility for a 2-month treatment stay. That moment crushed whatever lingering resentment I still held. By that point, all I felt was weary compassion. Sure, she bore the consequences of her own actions, but I never wanted her completely broken. At her request, and with Haley's gentle nudge, I went to visit her during her stay. It was a difficult meeting, civil, strained, emotional. But it brought closure we hadn't yet found. She admitted it stung to see me rebuild while she was still picking up the shattered pieces. And while she didn't say the words, "I'm sorry," the regret in her eyes said enough. She insisted that my commitment to stand by her during hard times should have meant offering her a second chance. That walking away was a betrayal not just of her, but of a sacred promise made before God to preserve the marriage. I responded with measured words, explaining that the day she was unfaithful was, to me, the day the marriage truly ended. She had simply taken longer to come to terms with that reality. Any vow I once made, I said, I would make peace with in my own spiritual time. And truthfully, I had already made my peace. I also let her know, sincerely, that I forgave her, again, for whatever small comfort that might have brought. She wept and thanked me. But in the end, no amount of effort or reconciliation could restore Rebecca to who she had once been. That version of her was gone. Still, she's found a measure of balance. She lives on her own now, sees people casually, but keeps her distance from serious commitments. Most of her energy goes into slowly rebuilding the relationship with Haley. She's steady now, not joyful the way she used to be, but grounded. It's sad, yes, but it's the reality. As for me, I've come to reflect on all of it with far less regret than I expected. What weighs on me most is the hurt it caused Haley. That part will always sting. And sometimes, an old bitterness bubbles up, thinking about everything we missed out on during those years we could have spent as a whole family. In a flawless world, none of it would have happened that way. But this world isn't flawless. It's tangled and volatile. And if my first marriage hadn't fallen apart, I wouldn't have the life I'm living now, with Lauren and our patchwork family. We are deeply in love. We treasure what we have with genuine gratitude every single day. The descent was terrifying, like free-falling from a great height. But when I hit bottom, it didn't destroy me. Instead, I found something firm beneath my feet. And in time, I found someone new to walk beside me. I've done my best to make peace with it all. I've forgiven where I needed to, stood my ground when it counted, and held on tightly to what I knew mattered most. The rest? That's just life. Flawed, unscripted. And sometimes, if fortune leans your way, it turns out better than you dared hope. That's how I lost one chapter of my life and stepped into another. It wasn't a path I'd ever wish on someone else, but I survived it. Came through with a few scars, not many regrets, and hope still beating in my chest. And for me, for us, that's enough.